What is going on, guys? It is Wrestlelamia here, back with some more news. Join us now as we look at the wildest news stories and rumors you need to know, including Edge blocks a huge surprise on AEW Dynamite, Brock Lesnar is now a babyface, Network's furious with WWE, Braun Strowman locked in for Impact, and much more. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos, and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Now let's hit the intro and get straight into our first story. Now, first story looks at, did AEW beat WWE in the ratings? Now, did they beat WWE in the ratings thanks to the arrival of CM Punk? Well, the 20th August edition of Rampage and the 25th August edition of Dynamite posted some huge numbers, but neither show outright defeated Raw or SmackDown overall. The confusion seems to be over AEW shows pulling in impressive numbers in key demographics. Dave Meltzer noted that Rampage came in second for the week in sports and that Rampage beat SmackDown in 3 of the 4 key demographics. Likewise, this week's Dynamite was Wednesday's #1 rated show on cable. As impressive as these achievements are for AEW, the promotion did not beat the WWE unless you're willing to stretch things out, such as Dave Meltzer's comments in this week's Wrestling Observer Radio. He mentioned it was slightly below Raw and SmackDown, but easily beat SmackDown when you factor in SmackDown being in more homes, and would have beaten most Raws of late, but the last 2 weeks Raw has been hot, doing a 0.55 on 16th August because of Bill Goldberg and a 0.64 coming off SummerSlam, and the returns of Lesnar and Lynch plus an advertised appearance by Logan Paul. AEW did quite well last Friday and this Wednesday with the arrival of CM Punk. While there's room for growth, especially with the rumored debut of Bryan Danielson, the reports of WWE's ratings demise have been greatly exaggerated. Next up, some huge news on Brock Lesnar. Now, there's lots of news to report on Brock Lesnar returned to the WWE at SummerSlam following a 16-month absence, including his new contract with the WWE and he's here to stay, his status as a face or heel, and when the WWE signed him. First, let's look at his latest deal. Now, by all accounts, Brock Lesnar doesn't come cheap, and while it's unknown how much Lesnar signed for when he returned to the WWE, Fightful Select does have other details on the Beast Incarnate's latest WWE contract. Those within WWE that we spoke to are under the impression that Lesnar is under contract for roughly a year and a half, and at least 8 matches, though that is always available to change and negotiate further. It'll be interesting to see whether Lesnar pops the ratings on this week's SmackDown. Also, when did the WWE decide to sign Lesnar? Now, just when did the WWE decide to get Brock back in the WWE? The fans have heard repeated rumors about Lesnar returning to the WWE pretty much as soon as he dropped the WWE Championship to Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania 36, with murmurings that WWE was waiting for the return of fans to whisperings that AEW was interested in him. While the WWE had wanted to bring Lesnar back at some point, Dave Meltzer observed that CM Punk's AEW debut sped up WWE's plans. One story has it that Vince McMahon didn't know that, but it appears it wasn't so much McMahon or Fox fearing he's going to AEW as much as needing a big news story for the weekend as a counter. Lesnar was virtually certain to come back for the program with Reigns, but that was considered for months later, if The Rock didn't do WrestleMania in 2022 or years later, if he did. As for AEW, Meltzer observed Lesnar not only benefited from Punk's debut, but Tony Khan never had any intention of signing him. As always, Lesnar's timing got him an even better deal. And while at best we can tell there was nothing to AEW wanting him because the money to get to him would be so high. Next up, Brock is a babyface. Now, PW Insider notes Lesnar is now officially a babyface, the first time he's been one since his first run in the WWE, although some fans might argue Lesnar is a babyface anytime he wrestled John Cena. It should be nothing short of fascinating to see if Lesnar can pull off working as a babyface without Paul Heyman serving as his mouthpiece. Then again, the question of who Paul Heyman will side with, Lesnar or his current client Reigns, is another equally enticing situation that could lead to Heyman aligning with Lesnar. Next up, the networks is furious with WWE. Now, it looks like the WWE's 2 television partners, the USA Network and Fox, are furious with it over some recent moves. The USA Network is reportedly upset with the WWE for stacking the talent on Fox's SmackDown, while Fox is none too pleased with the WWE's failure to sign Punk. The Madman Wrestling podcast Andrew Zarian discussed the situation with the USA Network, saying, "There's a little bit of an issue with NBC and the USA guys, and the fact that this SmackDown roster is really stacked now." Now, you guys will no doubt recall USA's disgust when the WWE aired the planned Hell in a Cell pay-per-view match between Universal Champion Reigns and Rey Mysterio for free on SmackDown, with Wrestling Rumor having it that this prompted the WWE to air a Hell in a Cell match on Raw the very next week. Now, although SmackDown's acquisition of Brock Lesnar and Becky Lynch is a big boost for the blue brand, that doesn't mean Fox is happy with the WWE. Meltzer is reporting that Fox was very upset that the WWE didn't make a big offer to Punk to keep him from going to AEW. Meltzer added that Punk has a positive relationship with Fox from his making the deal with them for WWE backstage. In fact, it was Fox who were among the first to congratulate Punk on the big ratings Rampage did on Friday night. But this isn't the first time either broadcast channels have expressed its reservations with WWE, but at what point does it become a serious problem, especially when it comes time for the WWE to renegotiate its rights deal with them? If the WWE's past behavior is any indicator of failure, the WWE just doesn't care. It may make gestures to placate its partners, but ultimately the promotion is going to do whatever it feels best for business and deal with the consequences down the road. Next up, Adam Cole finished with WWE, and another big question concerns former NXT champion whose verbal deal with the WWE ends on 27th August. Today, in fact. The question of whether Cole is headed to another promotion or staying with the WWE continues to get more complicated. Now, Cultaholic just shows how difficult it is to get answers. Cole is yet to sign a new deal with the company, but question marks were raised about his WWE future after the former Undisputed Era leader was advertised for a live stream to promote WWE's Mattel action figures alongside Johnny Gargano. The live stream was actually filmed several weeks ago though, according to Mike Johnson of PW Insider, so post-production could be completed in advance. Like many signings, fans may not know anything until Cole returns to television or shows up in another promotion. Next up, Braun Strowman heading to Impact. Now, speaking of debuts, Braun Strowman is another name that fans are curious about in terms of his post-WWE future. While there were reports that they had second thoughts after releasing Strowman, Impact Wrestling Executive Vice President Scott D'Amore recently teased Strowman showing up at Impact's Bound for Glory pay-per-view, and now Meltzer is adding fuel to the fire, commenting, "It appears the former Braun Strowman will be here. Strowman is interesting because he is a big name who was a headliner in WWE until recently and would have probably been pushed to the top here." Strowman's potential signing, coupled with rumors that Impact is working hard to bring in Bray Wyatt, suggests the company is willing to pay out some huge bucks to expand the promotion from a second-tier company into one that can compete aggressively at a national level. How this might impact, no pun intended, its relationship with AEW should prove interesting, although crossovers featuring Strowman and Wyatt could prove lucrative for both companies. And finally, Edge blocks a huge surprise from showing up on AEW. And last but not least, Edge's SummerSlam entrance wowed fans when he used the entrance from his days with Gangrel and Christian in The Brood. However, did Edge stop Gangrel from showing up in AEW? Well, plans were changed at the last minute. Meltzer observed, David Heath, aka Gangrel, on his podcast said that he was supposed to be on the show, likely doing an angle involving Christian and Omega, but then was cancelled because the idea was similar to the Bloodbath idea the WWE had just done on SmackDown. AEW confirmed his story and noted he was cancelled after SmackDown, but he was also paid as if he was on the show. Now, this wouldn't be the first time Gangrel appeared in AEW, and fans will have to wait and see if he returns to AEW or shows up in Impact, where Christian Cage currently reigns as Impact Champion. But there you have it guys, the wildest news stories and rumours you need to know. Be sure to leave your comments down below, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.